The first night I stepped back into my childhood home, unease coiled around my throat like a noose. The familiar creak of the floorboards, the smell of old pine wood mixed with the scent of fading memories, it all felt alien. It had been years since I last walked these halls, years filled with pain, relentless pursuit, and the dark secrets of the world I had dared to explore. I was no longer the abandoned child of their derision. I had clawed my way into a realm where darkness thrived, and I was its reluctant harbinger. My family had laughed at me once, a cacophony of disbelief and judgment echoing in my ears. Insane, delusional. They had called me as I clutched my papers on entomopathogenic fungi, the parasitic spores that possessed insects and rendered them puppets of nature's malice. They couldn't grasp the truth I had unearthed about how this same horror could seep into the human mind, how it could whisper dark truths and twist sanity into something grotesque. They had wanted me to bury my research, to forget the ridicule I'd faced in the academic world after that high-profile forensic investigation had been tainted by my findings. But there was no forgetting, nor could I forgive them, for the betrayal masquerading as familial concern. It fueled my obsessions, igniting a fire within me that drove me deeper into the shadows of my studies. I isolated myself, surrounded by books and the remnants of those once living things consumed by the same spores I had once sought to understand. Standing now in the living room, I felt their eyes on me, a simmering mixture of disbelief and fear. They had welcomed me back, but I could see in their faces the skepticism still lingering beneath their feigned warmth. My sister, her arms crossed tightly, looked at me as though I were a ghost, and my parents wore expressions of strained confusion. They thought they understood the life I had chosen, but they had no idea of the darkness I had embraced or the horrors I had endured. "Do you really believe in that nonsense?" my father had scoffed in our last conversation before I left, his words still palpable, like the stench of decay that clung to me now. I had wanted him to understand that the world was much more sinister than he could fathom, but instead, I had been the mad one, the disgrace. "I've come back with something to show you," I said, my voice steady despite the unease brewing within me. They looked at each other, confusion mingling with apprehension. I could feel the weight of their derision laced in the air like a poison. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the crooked window, I pulled out the small glass vial from my coat pocket. It contained a thick, viscous substance, the color of tarnished gold. Inside, particles swirled like a sinister dance, hints of fungi that could turn the uninitiated into mindless vessels. I had spent years documenting how these spores could invade human consciousness, how they fed off despair and transformed identity. "What is that?" my sister asked, her voice trembling as she took a step back, her skepticism now laced with fear. "Proof," I replied, the weight of the word heavy on my tongue. "This is what I've been studying. It's not nonsense. It's real. It's terrifying, and it's here. Enough of this," my father barked, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Before I could explain further, the lights flickered, and for a moment the house was draped in darkness. I felt something shift in the air, a collective shiver that crawled across my skin. When the lights returned, I stood my ground, the vial still in my hand, the truth of my work waiting to be revealed. "Let me show you," I shouted, desperation carving raw lines in my voice. I uncapped the vial, the contents bubbling ominously as I poured a small amount onto a piece of bread I had brought with me, an offering to the sinister realm I had uncovered. "No!" my mother shrieked, but it was too late. The spores danced in the air, curling around us like tendrils, creeping closer to my family. They watched, wide-eyed, as the reality of my research materialized before their eyes. The bread sat there for a moment, a still life of horror, before movement began. It twitched and jerked, an image blurring between life and death as the fungi worked quickly. An insect, a cockroach perhaps, scuttled from the shadows. The cockroach moved with eerie precision, its antennae twitching in a rhythm that matched something deeper, something dreadfully sinister. "No!" my sister gasped, stepping back, her face pale. They were beginning to understand. The horror of their disbelief was manifesting before them. The cockroach turned to face us, its eyes glistening with a malevolent light. It was no longer just an insect. It was a vessel for something ancient, something that thrived on fear and chaos. The spores had claimed it, and I felt the weight of the truth settle over us like a dark shroud. "Everything I told you was real," I whispered, my heart racing as I watched the realization dawn in their eyes, the cost of their ridicule etched in every gasp and horrified glance. As the creature moved closer, I felt the release of years of rejection, years of struggle. I had become something they could not ignore, a testament to the shadows they had derided. And now they stood, paralyzed in fear, witnessing the very essence of what they had scorned. When the cockroach finally turned to scuttle back into the shadows, I felt a strange peace wash over me. I had faced the darkness, and it had not consumed me. It wanted something else. As my family trembled in the corner, I realized I had vindicated myself, not just from their ridicule, but from the world's inherent ignorance. Coming back wasn't just an act of defiance. It was an unveiling, a final confrontation with the shadows they once dismissed. I could see the fear etched into their features, the realization that they had laughed at a truth far more sinister than they had ever fathomed. I stepped back, letting the terror settle in around them, unyielding. I would leave them with this echo of darkness, a reminder of what they had chosen to deny. And with that, I turned and walked into the night, knowing that at last I had emerged from the shadows victorious, leaving behind a chilling reminder that ignorance bears its own kind of horror.